You are waking up in the middle of the night with an eerie feeling that someone or something is watching you, staring deep into your soul and no longer being able to control your own body. Many scientists believe most of this case can explain by sleep paralysis. However, not all of the cases can be explained so easily. Could demons be responsible? After years of reports, do we have any scientific proof today? These are the stories that stick with you long after the lights are out, the ones that make you question everything you thought you knew about the line between our world and whatever lies beyond. Here are the top 10 most shocking real-life demonic possession cases from around the world. Our first case takes us back to the 1940s with the chilling story of Roland Doe, a pseudonym used to protect the identity of a young boy from Maryland who claimed to be possessed by a demonic force. Imagine you're just a kid playing with your Ouija board, trying to contact your deceased aunt, when suddenly things take a sinister turn. You start hearing scratching sounds, objects move on their own, and you feel an overwhelming presence in your room. That's what Roland Doe experienced. As the weeks went by, the events escalated. Furniture would violently overturn. Strange guttural noises would come from Roland, and he would speak in tongues, shocking everybody around him. Priests were called in, desperate to help the young boy, to drive out the entity that had taken hold of him. The exorcism of Roland Doe was nothing like what you see in the movies. It was a brutal, terrifying spiritual battle that lasted for weeks. This case sent shockwaves through America, inspiring the iconic book and film The Exorcist. Next, we travel to 1970s Germany, to the small town of Klingenberg, where a young woman named Anneliese Michel became the focus of one of the most controversial exorcism cases ever recorded. Anneliese was a devout Catholic, a seemingly normal young woman until she began experiencing terrifying seizures, hallucinations, and exhibiting bizarre behaviors. Doctors were baffled, their treatments proving useless against the unseen force that seemed to be consuming her. Driven to desperation, Anneliese's family turned to the church for help, convinced that their daughter wasn't sick, but possessed by a demon. Two priests, Fathers Arnold Rentz and Ernst Alt, were called to perform the ancient ritual of exorcism. What followed was a grueling 10 months of intense spiritual warfare. Anneliese's voice transformed into guttural growls, speaking in different languages, claiming to be possessed by multiple demonic entities. The priests documented everything, recording over 40 hours of audio tapes that captured the chilling events unfolding within that small German home. Yet the demonic entity within Anneliese only seemed to grow stronger, causing her to inflict harm upon herself and those around her. In July 1976, Anneliese tragically passed away due to malnutrition and dehydration. She was only 23. The priests involved in the failed exorcism were brought to trial and found guilty of negligent homicide. They were sentenced to 6 months in jail. Now we shift gears to a more recent case, one that unfolded in the heartland of America. This is the story of Latoya Ammons and her family, a story so terrifying, so deeply strange that it became known as the Gateway of Gary. Picture this. You move into a new home, hoping for a fresh start, but instead, you find yourself trapped in a nightmare. That's what happened to Latoya and her 3 children in Gary, Indiana, back in 2011. It started subtly. Strange noises in the night, shadows moving in the corner of their eyes. Then things took a dark turn. The children, all under the age of 12, began behaving erratically, their personalities shifting, their voices changing. Latoya witnessed her children levitating, walking up walls, their eyes turning completely black. Desperate for help, Latoya contacted everyone she could think of. Doctors, priests, even the police. The police, initially skeptical, became witnesses to the unexplained. The Gateway of Gary remains an open wound in the world of paranormal investigation. Moving on, we find ourselves in the rural town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, where the Smurl family endured a horrifying ordeal that would become known as one of the most well-documented cases of demonic haunting and possession. Imagine this. You're just trying to live a normal life, raise your family, when suddenly your home becomes a breeding ground for something evil, something that wants to tear your family apart. For Jack and Janet Smurl and their 4 daughters, it started with whispers, cold spots, and the feeling of being watched. Then, the paranormal activity intensified. Objects moved on their own. Disembodied voices taunted them, and foul odors permeated the air. The entity or entities focused their torment on Janet. She was physically assaulted, sexually violated, and tormented with visions of demonic figures. Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed paranormal investigators known for their work on the Amityville case, were called in to help the Smurl family. They declared the home demonically infested. A case intertwining the legal system and the paranormal, David Glatzel, tormented by an entity, became a pawn in a twisted game, haunted by nightmares, seeing terrifying creatures. His reality spiraled into something sinister. Desperate, his family sought help from anyone who would listen. They contacted psychics, priests, anyone who might help. They met Anna Cheyenne Johnson, who became tragically intertwined with their lives. Convinced David was possessed, they turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens performed exorcisms to free David. Anna allegedly taunted the entity, challenging it to possess him. What happened next shocked the world. Anna murdered his landlord, claiming possession by the same demon. The Devil's Defense case challenged the foundations of free will and criminal responsibility. A house on Green Street became the epicenter of a paranormal storm, the Enfield poltergeist. Peggy Hodgson and her family faced unseen forces, strange noises, furniture moving, and sinister events. 11-year-old Janet became the focal point. Her voice changed. Speaking in unknown languages, she levitated, objects flew, and voices taunted, witnessed by neighbors, police, and reporters. Investigators documented the events, seeking evidence. The Enfield poltergeist remains a debated paranormal case. This is the story of Michael Taylor, a man from Ossett, England, whose life took a tragic turn after a harrowing encounter with the unknown. In 1974, his behavior took a dark turn. He became withdrawn, prone to fits of rage, and began speaking in tongues. His wife and church members sought help from Father Peter Vincent, who performed an exorcism. The exorcism was a harrowing ordeal lasting for hours. Shortly after, Michael brutally murdered his wife, Christine. His defense argued the exorcism left him in a state of diminished responsibility, but he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Our next case takes us to South Africa, where Clara Germana Sale became the focus of a terrifying case of demonic possession. Imagine being 16 when something dark and powerful takes hold of you. This was Clara's reality. Clara exhibited strange behaviors, aversion to holy objects, speaking in tongues, and superhuman strength. Her fellow students whispered she had made a pact with the devil. The priests performed an intense exorcism, a desperate battle to free her soul. Witnesses reported Clara levitating, clinging to walls, and speaking in guttural voices. The exorcism, which took place on September 11, 1906, was one of the first documented exorcisms in South Africa. Due to the dramatic nature of Clara's actions, it drew significant attention. We return to Pennsylvania, to a seemingly ordinary home on Brownsville Road, where a family's worst nightmare became a terrifying reality. This is the story of the demon of Brownsville Road. Imagine this. You buy your dream home, a place to raise your family, only to discover that you're not alone, that something sinister has been waiting for you. That's what happened to the family who moved into this house. What started as subtle occurrences, flickering lights, cold spots, and the feeling of being watched, escalated into a full-blown demonic haunting that threatened to tear their lives apart. The family, too terrified to even speak its name, endured months of torment. They reported disembodied voices whispering threats, shadow figures lurking in the hallways, and objects moving violently on their own. Children were scratched, their toys manipulated by unseen hands, their laughter replaced by terrified screams. Desperate for help, the family reached out to paranormal investigators, priests, and anyone who would listen. The stories they told were so terrifying, so disturbing, that even the most skeptical investigators couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Over a period of 2 years, the family worked with 3 different priests in an effort to expel the demon from their home. A widely reported incident involving the possessed boy of South Africa occurred in 2016. The boy, who was around 9 years old at the time, was said to have experienced episodes that included violent outbursts and unusual behavior. Witnesses, including family members and local clergy, claimed that he spoke in deep voices and exhibited physical strength that was not typical for a child of his age. Reports indicated that some professionals believed his behavior could be attributed to psychological issues, while others supported the family's belief in demonic possession. Local religious leaders conducted exorcisms in an attempt to rid the boy of the alleged demonic influence. Are these cases truly the result of demonic forces, or are they manifestations of something else, something rooted in the complexities of the human psyche? We may never know the answers for sure, but these stories remind us that there are forces at play in our world that we may never fully understand. Ultimately, the explanation for the reports of possession, whether through scientific reasoning or paranormal activity, remains subjective and varies according to individual beliefs. While discussions surrounding demonic possession remain highly debated, there is another horror scenario that genuinely terrifies scientists and could feasibly become a reality: a zombie apocalypse. Believe it or not, this unsettling possibility has the potential to haunt scientists' nightmares. How does science lend credence to this frightening scenario? Watch the next video to find out.